you'll know why you're here. Well, Darla may know many of you, but I don't. So
Oh yeah, sorry.
that's okay. What I would like to do, so you don't have to hear me ramble the whole time, is let's just go around. If you could share, just real quick, your name, your favorite TV show. Let's go with that. That tells a lot about a person. And a hobby or interest that you have. So we're digging deep personal here. Let's start right here. Put you on the spot. Your name, favorite TV show, and a hobby.
My name is Noelle. My favorite TV show right now probably is New Amsterdam.
Okay.
And my hobby is softball.
Awesome. Okay. Awesome. How about Stephanie?
I'm trying to think. Well, my name is Stephanie. My favorite TV show, I guess, Doctor Who.
Okay.
Hobby, right now, I'm learning to paint and draw.
Awesome. Little artist in the making.
Trying to be.
Yeah. Awesome. Very cool. Hannah, how about you? You're not exempt.
So I'm Hannah. Favorite TV show? What have we watched lately? I don't know.
He's not helping.
Big Bang Theory's over, so that was like a really good stretch for us. But I still have to say that was probably it. And then a hobby. I don't know if you consider being a mom, because I really, really, really enjoy that. So
Awesome. Cool.
That's all I have time for.
yeah.
Sheree, how about you?
I'm Cherie. My favorite TV show is probably Gilmore Girls.
Oh
Oh, that's a good one.
All the ladies went, oh yeah.
And that's what I was gonna say, same thing as Hannah. I'm a stay-at-home homeschool mom, so that's pretty much my life.
Awesome. Okay. Hey, that's great.
Yeah, I don't do much outside of that.
How about you, man?
Yep, Randy. Favorite TV show would be The Office.
Yes.
Good, good.
And my hobby, got quite a few of them, but right now it's really big into metal detecting.
Okay. Found anything interesting?
Oh yeah, yeah, lots of stuff. Should I begin?
Oh,
Tell
no.
stuff?
Okay, moving right
Just
along. Moving
move
right along.
on.
Can I plug the YouTube?
That's how you can come there,
What's the
I
most
will do
valuable
that.
thing you
We'll
found?
hook up later, I'll talk to you later. I take every lead. What?
What's the most valuable thing you found?
Ooh.
That's hard. Just
Monetarily.
Yeah, monetarily, in that world, it's what anyone will pay. You know what I
Okay.
mean?
Open-ended response.
Yeah. So how about the oldest thing?
Okay,
that
oldest
I-
thing.
That I know of,
Sure.
anyway. Oldest coin would be like 1730s.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, British coppers.
That's awesome.
Yeah, here too, like I didn't go anywhere. They found
Really?
it- Well, Jefferson County, but,
Okay.
you know.
I don't know where that is, but if it's here, it's.
10 minutes from here.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah,
Cool.
so very cool stuff, yeah. Yeah,
Awesome.
really neat. And Civil War stuff is kinda heavy.
Sure, sure. Yeah, plentiful around here, I'm sure. Awesome. Okay, let's come right up in front of Randy.
Becky, I like any western, especially Clint Eastwood.
Okay.
And, activity, anything that's active, I like.
Okay.
And
Name one thing.
Elvis. Motorcycle.
Motorcycle. All right. You have your own?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. I do not. But I like them. I don't trust myself on them. But. Awesome. Thanks, Becky. How about coming right over here?
Yvonne. My favorite show right now is, well, there's several, but any of the forensic type murder shows.
Okay. Okay.
But I really enjoy forensics and all of the different way they figure the stuff out. It's amazing to me. And my hobby probably is crocheting. I just can't do it much now because I've been
Okay. That's awesome. Come on over here.
Diana. I'm stuck in HGTV. I
Good
like
place.
flea market.
Oh,
I
okay.
love to
Okay.
take old things and just redo them. My whole house is all old stuff repainted. My husband says he's tired of watching walls dry.
It can be a dangerous station to watch.
And my hobby is my grandkids, I would say. I follow them and go to games and travel them around and have them for dinner and all those things. So.
Very cool. Very good.
I'm Rachel. I guess my TV show, I'm eagerly awaiting season 3 of The Crown. That's on Netflix.
The originals? Or the
Well,
new ones?
the originals and new ones.
Okay, okay.
And then Marvel, all the different Marvel movies
Anything
and
action.
things.
Gotcha.
I enjoy that. And for a hobby, I enjoy like growing food.
Growing
So-
food. Okay.
So I do like microgreens and things like all winter long.
Awesome, man.
Garden outside and
Do you can stuff?
no, I'm not very like advanced at it. It's something I enjoy. I'm not
Okay.
like, not like I'm good at it or anything. But I do like a lot of food fermentation and
Okay.
probiotic type stuff. So
Cool.
it's just kind of something I do, but it's not. I wouldn't say I'm good at it.
Okay.
You know, I
That's
don't have
fine,
a
man.
basement full of things to do.
Awesome, awesome. Well, my name is Rusty. I was trying to really think on my favorite show. I was buying myself time by having all of you go first. And I still haven't figured it out, but I think it's between two. Probably SEAL Team or Curse of Oak Island. Anybody ever seen that show?
That's fine.
They've never found anything in 100 years. And yet I keep going back.
I know
Although
that.
they really are starting to find stuff now.
Yeah. Are they?
A little bit here and there, but every season I'm like, oh, we gotta see what happens. Nothing, but we gotta see what happens. So,
That's the best show though.
and I think a hobby for me, I play softball too. I play slow pitch, travel on a men's team, and I love smoking meat. There's nothing better on a hot summer day than sitting beside a smoker, watching nothing happen. It's great. You smell it. Oh. It doesn't even matter if it tastes good at the end. I mean, it does, but it's the process. What's that?
Brisket or
I've never done a brisket because I've never had time to sit for 12 hours or 16 hours. But it is on my bucket list to do a brisket one day. So,
We should have talked about this last night.
I know.
Put one on.
oh man, we messed up. Well, see, I'm here tomorrow too. So, I mean, I think my favorite thing to smoke is ribs. Yeah, ribs. Cool. Well, like Darla said, we a year and a half ago, we started what we call the Akron Dream Center, and it actually started much before that. But that's when we started meeting with the team, getting people around the table, trying to get ideas together, figure out what God was doing, what He wasn't doing, which is equally as important, and started hashing this thing out. And here we are, a year later. Much like Darla said about herself, we're no experts. We haven't gotten it all figured out. We've learned a lot of hard knocks along the way, and we've learned from people pouring into us and helping us, and we've learned through trial and error, all the ways that you tend to learn when you're not an expert. We've done that, and so we're still learning. That process hasn't ended for us, and I hope it never does. Because when it does stop, when we stop learning, I think we're in trouble. And so I don't come before you as an expert. It's really an honor and a privilege to be here with you. I'm really just a knucklehead that said yes to Jesus, and we've been trying to figure out every step of the way since then. So if there's not experts in here, I feel like I'm in good company, and I hope you feel the same. So everything that I say, just hear it from a heart of loving the Lord and wanting to see people reached and learning as we go. That's where it's all coming from. So just a quick little dive into our story. I want to make sure today that I don't take too long to really talk about us a lot, because here's why. What I value about the Dream Centers is, and whether or not that's what this is called or not, it doesn't matter. What I value about that approach to ministry is that if you look at websites of Dream Centers across the country, they all look different. There's some similar programs, and there's a whole lot of different ones, and I appreciate that, because what that shows me is that there's a value of the community, because the community dictates what the outreaches are, and that's how it should be. The community needs are going to look different in Akron, Ohio than they do in Martinsburg, West Virginia, than they do in Los Angeles, California. Now, poverty has some of the same underlying symptoms. You'll see a lot of similarities as you go from place to place, but how they present themselves and the opportunities, the strengths, the weaknesses, all of that is different based on every single community that you come in contact with. So it makes no sense for me to share everything that we've done, because guess what? That may not have anything to do with what you guys are going to do here. It may not be relevant, but I think there's little nuggets of underlying things that we can have in common and really talk through. And so all that to say that I will share our story, but I really just want to share what I think God's put on my heart, and that's just for the heart of Compassion Ministries and outreach as a whole. because I think that's something we can all have in unity, we can all have in common, is the heart of why we do what we do, and some approaches because of that. So just a quick bit of our story. This whole Dream Center thing probably started about the same time that, guess I'm done, let's have some.
Now you're done, let me
Yeah.
grab some more.
Do you want me to wait?
There's
or
another
keep
mic
going?
back behind you that's corded.
All right, back in business. So about the same time Darla was sharing, our vision, our dream really started at a district conference, a Foursquare district conference, where Brad and Stella Reed, who are the New York City Dream Center directors, founders, shared their story. It was 3 years ago now, I think, in Baltimore. Were you guys there? And really, when they shared their story, God had already been stirring in my heart, my wife's heart, for outreach and missions, local missions. I serve as the outreach and missions pastor at the Medina Foursquare Church, which is about 40 minutes west of Akron. We're still there currently. But God was just beginning to stir something in me, and I didn't really know what that was. I didn't know what it looked like. I didn't know how it would flesh out. I just knew it was going to be different. And when I heard Brad and Stella share their story, it's like the light bulb went off. And I just knew that that was what we were supposed to do. And so that night, they shared in the evening session. That night, we went to bed like nothing, woke up the next morning, I was in the shower, and I just had this download. There's no other way I can describe it besides the Holy Spirit. It was just a download that would not stop. It wouldn't go away. It still brings me to tears when I think of it, because I know that it was God birthing something. And that's incredible. It's an incredible feeling. It's incredibly humbling to be a part of that. And the real kicker was when I told my wife, after I got out of the shower, I told my wife what had happened, and she's like, okay. And that's when it was like, oh crap. Because I have a bunch of ideas, and most of them go by the wayside. I'm a dreamer. I always walk around with my head in the clouds. But if she confirms something, then I know it's legit, because she's like the anchor, And when I told her that, she said, okay. I'm like, oh, now we really got to do this thing. Like, this just got real. And so, but from that point on, much like Darla had said, I'm always ready to go, let's do it today, tomorrow. But God put us on a waiting pattern for a whole year, and that was torture. For me, it was torture, but it was really an incredible opportunity for growth and development in me personally. We decided and we committed that we would take a year and pray about it and really make sure that it was the Lord and not us. And so we were asking God for confirmation in 3 ways: in Scripture, in His peace, and in somebody else speaking into it. And right away, the first couple of months, God gave us Scripture. God gave us peace from the get-go. We knew it. And so it was really just waiting on somebody else to speak into this thing and really kind of confirm that it was what we were supposed to do. And so a whole year later, at the following conference, almost a year to the day, I was being ordained, and Pastor Peter, our district supervisor, and his wife, I'm a crier, y'all. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
It just is what it is. So hopefully I don't get hopefully I don't need tissues. Hopefully I'm not like a broken mess. But it's just, man. But as they were praying over us, the words they spoke just confirmed it to the core, and we knew above anything else that we didn't know how, we didn't know what it would look like. We just had to do it. So we had the conversation with our pastor, and he was on board. And so this journey began a year later of trying to figure out what the heck this thing was going to look like. And we didn't even know where it was going to be, to be honest. We wanted to end up in Florida. We were tired of Ohio winter. We're like, this is our ticket out of here. Like, they need Jesus in Florida, the Bahamas, I don't care. So we're like, we're going down there, and we're leaving Ohio's winters in the dust. And then God stepped in, and that changed everything. But so we went on this journey of figuring out what we were doing and where. And in that, we started ministering as an extension of the church, as just a ministry of the church. It was, our pastor was on board. It was safe in that sense. It made sense, and our church was incredibly blessing and encouraging and equipping, and I'm so grateful for that because it was a process for us. We didn't get it right away. We had to figure out where we were going. We initially landed on the west side of Akron, and how we even got to Akron in the first place was that's just where I graduated from school. I had ties there. I knew of the need there. I've always loved that city. It wasn't Florida, but if it wasn't going to be Florida, I guess Akron would work. But we were originally looking on the west side of town, and it just didn't seem to fit. It just didn't feel right. We didn't have the connection there. And then, kind of on a whim, I reached out to a YMCA on the east side of town that I was more familiar with, and it turned out that the executive director of that branch was my football coach from high school. And so it was just one of those God-ordained, God-appointed things that we began a partnership with them, and we're able to work alongside them. We still do. And so we launched our first effort, which was block parties. We just went to a community 1 week a month, or one Saturday a month. We took grills, games, and activities for the kids, and we just went in and we loved on them. It was a HUD development, much like you guys have those around here. 326 apartment units of Section 8 housing, 95% of which are single moms. And we just went in and we loved on these people, and God just did some really, really cool things. So since then, to fast forward and kind of speed this up a little bit, we've launched 2 other programs. Right now we focus on, we still do the block parties. We feed kids over the weekends, school weekends. So we call it a backpack program. Basically, we send them home with food to cover the meals they would miss from being in school. Our latest program is with that same East Akron YMCA. They have a Phoenix School, which is an alternative school for students who aren't thriving in public schools, a lot of behavioral issues, truancy, things like that, kids out of jail. And we've partnered with them to teach these kids life skills. And though that's been incredibly challenging, it's been incredibly rewarding. And we're not teachers, so I'm like, how are we gonna do this? But it was a need that God brought to the forefront through conversation. It was a path we knew we were supposed to walk. So maybe I shouldn't use the word teach. Maybe I should say we equip them with life skills. But, and this fall, we're hoping to launch a program that mentors some of the junior high students in this community that we serve. We've just learned that in talking with the manager that there's issues coming about because these kids have nothing to do. The kids have confirmed that there's nothing to do, and so we want to go give them something to do and be able to mentor them and help them make positive life choices, and ultimately it comes down to discipling these kids. It's going to look a little different at first, but that's the hope. We hope that we get to that place of really discipling them. So, in a nutshell, I guess a rather large nutshell when I look at the clock, that's our journey and how we got to where we are. We just said yes, took a step of faith, not knowing what we were walking into, what we were doing. God surrounded us with incredible people who are strong everywhere that I'm weak. And by His grace alone, we're here today still. So it's been a great ride. It's been a great journey, a lot of learning. But I'm just so thankful that we took the step and that God would have chosen us for something like this. There's a million other people who could do it way better than we could. And yet, somehow, some way, here we are.
Do you want the buzz, or do you not want the buzz?
If I could not trip over this thing.
Okay, we'll find the buzz.
Does that bother everybody else? Okay. Cool. So guys, that's kind of our journey. But I'm not really here, like I said, to share with you much about us, unless we'll get some Q&A after this. And if you have questions about us, I'm happy to answer them. But I don't want to monopolize the time just talking about us, because that may not translate to you. But what I do really want to share about is something that God has birthed in my heart that I'm passionate about. And when we have, in our church, when we have teams that go on mission trips, or when we work with outreach, or even in the Dream Center when we have volunteers, this is something I'm always trying to communicate to people. Because I think it's really important, and I think it's really essential to what we do, and that's really getting into the core of heart. And so I wanted to take some time this morning and talk about heart. Is that cool? And I might be preaching to the choir. I hope I am. If that's the case, then man, let this be a reminder, because heart is the thing, like I said, that unifies us all. It spans across everything we do. It's the glue and the fabric of the kingdom, and it's really this heart of love. And And so when we're dealing with compassion ministries, outreaches, things like that, like love is the glue in the fabric. And I think sometimes we say that, sometimes we know that up here, but hasn't made the 18-inch drop down here. And I think it has, but sometimes it's just remembering that, because the people we're dealing with, a lot of times they're the societal rejects. A lot of times they're the downcast. A lot of times they're the ones that people want to push into a corner and pretend don't exist. Well, they do exist. And they're not just going to go away. And they have value, and they matter just as much as you and I do. And I think if we see that through God's lens, it changes everything. And so really what I want to talk about is just a couple of C's. Compassion, care, and connection. And I think if we can remember these, this is something that transcends whatever ministry we do, whatever this thing ends up being called, a dream center, not a dream center, that doesn't matter. Whatever efforts are linked to this, aren't linked to this, the thing that transcends it, I think, is compassion, care, and connection, because it really comes down to love. And so, is that cool if we spend some time talking about that?
Sure, absolutely.
Awesome. And then we'll get to some Q&A at the end. Like I said, if there's things that, practical things, nuts and bolts things, like I'm happy to share our experience, but I wanted to start here and build a foundation, because it really spans everything we do. So compassion is the first thing. Let me ask you this, how many of you, if you see a need, how many of you feel a natural tug in your heart? I'd venture most of us, right? That's why we're here. Because we feel that natural tug in our heart. When we see a need, when we see somebody in need, that's a natural thing in most of us. That's wired and ornate, and it comes, and sometimes there's nothing we can do about it. Sometimes it's overwhelming. Sometimes you have to tuck it away. Sometimes you have to use discernment. It can really spring up a lot of things. But it's why we're here, and it's why you're a part of this ministry, because something inside you goes ding when you see a need, and there's something you can do about it. And I think Scripture really shares the heart of this, and I'm going to turn on my phone here, not that I'm texting, but I wanted to read this out of the NLT version because I like the way it's worded there. Scripture really kind of reinforces this concept. If you look in 1 John 3:17, we'll start in 16 actually. And what I love about this is it's really not mixed words. It's pretty straightforward and direct. But he says this, and starting verse 16, we know what real love is because Jesus gave up his life for us, so we also ought to give up our lives for our brothers and sisters. Now listen to this. This should step on every one of our toes a little bit in a healthy, good way. He says this in verse 17, if someone has enough money to live well and sees a brother or sister in need but shows no compassion, how can God's love be in that person? That's a humbling, sobering, scary verse of Scripture right there. Because I don't know how many times I've passed by people on the side of the road broken down, and I've been like, Lord, please touch them. I'm going to be late for church. And I keep driving away. Now listen, I know in our culture, unfortunately, there's safety issues and concerns. I get that, and that's 95% of the reason why I usually don't stop. But I just use that as an example. But if you think about it, like, that's not mixed up words. There's no sugarcoating that. That's black and white. Like, if we see somebody in need and don't do anything about it, it doesn't say maybe they need to repent. It doesn't say maybe they're having a rough week. It doesn't say maybe their attitude needs adjusted. It says how can God's love be in that person? That's pretty straight up. And there's times that I've not had compassion on people. I still need to work on that. I haven't arrived yet, And so I look at that verse and it compels me to always take my heart before the Lord. In everyday life, but especially when we're doing these ministries, especially when we're reaching out to people. We were at the mom ministry last night, and you could see the compassion. You could see the love. And it blessed me to see it. Like just the people coming up and, hey, how can we help you? And these are people, some of them were high, some of them reeked like weed, some of them you could tell were high on other things. Some of them had whatever kind of issues going on, and it doesn't matter. We're going to have compassion, and we're going to love these people well, right where they're at, because that's what Jesus did. Now, through that, Jesus had opportunity to get into other things, but Jesus loved people right where they're at, and it comes down to a heart of compassion, which is rooted and anchored in a heart of love. And guys, if we don't have that as a foundation, then we're really going to struggle with these kinds of ministries. Because when people abuse it, and they will, our first reaction is going to be to lash out. But we have to have compassion, and we have to understand, and yeah, we have to have things in place, and there's policies, and you safeguard, and you help, yes, I get all that. But we can't look at that person different. We have to still keep a heart of compassion and love. Amen?
Right.
Am I preaching to the choir? I hope so.
Well, might I also add that it doesn't necessarily mean that you give them something either.
Absolutely.
I mean, look at the guy that, even them, that I don't have silver and gold,
Yep.
but what I do have, I'll give you.
Yep.
And that's what they really need anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they might just squander what the other resources.
Yep. No, that's right on, and we'll get into some of that in a little bit. There's definitely discernment and understanding, and so knowing all these things. I'm not trying to paint a canvas with one bold stroke, because what Darla just said is right. You've got to use wisdom, and you don't want to be an enabler either. But when people are abusing and you know it, how you respond to them is different if it's anchored in compassion and anchored in love. And that's what they need to see. They need to see us being counterculture, because Jesus was counterculture. Because normal culture would say, no, you're abusing me, get out of here and don't come back, right? But maybe we could respond a little bit different and have a heart of compassion. So let me ask you this, and you guys can raise your hand, yell it out, whatever. I would love to hear, what are some of the things God has stirred compassion in your heart for? Is it a certain people group? Is it a certain demographic? Is it, we could all say, the poverty group, the needy, but is it children? Is it single moms? Is it vets? Is it homeless specifically? What are some of the things you guys feel God has stirred compassion in your heart for? The addicted? Okay, how about you?
Children of the addicted parents.
Children of the addicted parents. It really goes hand in hand, don't it? Absolutely. Somebody else, Rachel? Strippers? Okay. That can be a messy thing that, I'm telling you, a lot of Christians will take the good Samaritan, we'll take the priest and Levite approach, and we'll walk around that one because it's messy and sticky.
What did you say?
Strippers. Somebody else, what are some of the things? Did you have something?
Victims of trafficking.
Victims of trafficking, absolutely. And let me ask you this: do you know? Can you speak for your community here specifically? What does trafficking look like here? I get that it looks like. I get what it looks like, but is there a specific one area that's really hits hard here in Martinsburg?
For our area here in Martinsburg, a lot of it's local.
Okay.
So a lot of it is, the pimps are using their girlfriends for drugs. So
Gotcha.
they'll start trafficking their girlfriends out. They're trafficking out younger teenagers. So a lot of our prostitutes that we have in the area are probably more or less trafficking victims. So
Okay.
it's not your typical what you see on TV of where kids are getting kidnapped or
Sure.
anything like that, but it's our community. They get in these messy situations, and then before they know it, they're stuck and they can't get out.
Yeah. And drugs are an incredible bait too.
Strip clubs too, a lot of them are forced into stripping.
Okay.
And those kind of things.
Sure.
You can tell, I go into the strip clubs occasionally, and there are girls in there that you can tell which ones want to be there and which ones
Right.
are kind of forced to be there.
Yeah. Absolutely.
On the other hand, it's also, as a mother, it's gotten to the point where when you're going shopping, your kids, you don't let them out of your sight.
Yeah.
Because, there have been incidents where people have been acting very strangely. I have several friends that have told me of incidents that they've had, and they're grabbing their kids and running out of the store. Just in a regular, everyday shopping trip
Yeah.
where you should feel safe.
Sure. It is an interesting world we live in. Anybody else? What's something that you feel God stirred compassion for? Yeah.
I have had compassion for a long time for the handicapped.
The handicap.
The
Okay.
intellectually disabled adults, mostly
Okay.
I've worked with for 15 years. And that's a big part, it's been a big part of my life, is that there's a big need
Sure.
for those folks to have places to go to do things. They're pushed back a lot. There's just not a lot offered for
Sure.
them. And just a day program where they can just go and enjoy being around other people, or even helping finding part-time jobs, you know, anything
Yeah.
like that.
Now, does Martinsburg have anything for the mentally disabled population? Is there?
Well, they have, well, I worked for a company that's just right on the street,
Okay.
actually. And they have several companies like that, that's what they do. But as far as just, I don't know of a lot of programs or churches that just kind of reach out to them and do fun
Sure.
things with them.
Sure.
I come from North Carolina, and there was a lot more of that, and I haven't seen so much here in this area. I'm sure there are some things that people are doing, but that's just a dream of mine. to be able
Yeah,
to do
absolutely.
that.
Absolutely.
There's a program at one of our local high schools where they take students who have mental challenges and they get them work experience in different locations.
Sure, sure.
That's something that,
Okay. That's awesome.
Most of the companies do a little bit of that, like this company does
Okay.
too. Yeah.
But not a place for them to go and belong, really, is
Just
what
have
you're.
a wall and have fun, and
Yeah,
have
yeah.
a prom, and,
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely. You seen the Tim Tebow thing?
yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I can add to that too, because my son is on the autism spectrum,
Okay.
and I have a master's in counseling, I've worked with the autism community. And, so I see it from a different perspective that a lot of people in ministry see it from, and I've addressed that, the need for that, to church leadership, and they don't understand the need to approach people from a different, than you would approach, you know, your average church member.
Yeah, sure, sure.
Or to provide accommodations for that.
Yeah. And I think, and I'll say this delicately and gently, and not throwing stones, but I think one thing that is always a bit of a struggle is when you have these kinds of ministries, especially in an urban setting, it's different and it requires a different approach and it needs to look different. It has to look different. You can't take, I'll use our example. Our city of Medina, Ohio is very much white suburbia USA. It's the houses with the white picket fences, it's blue collar workers, white collar workers, it's a hybrid of everything, but it's very much so. There's farms around there, the fair is a huge deal, you know, it's like, it's that. And then you translate to Akron, and it's night and day different. Akron is very much so inner city urban. It may not have 1 million people like some of the big cities, but it has that feel and that mentality, and a lot of people live on survival mode. And so I say that to say that we have to look at these things different. And we'll get to this a little bit more, but it's definitely worth saying that whatever you guys end up doing, it's okay if it looks different, and I encourage it to look different, and I encourage you to think outside the box. I encourage you to blow the box up and allow God to define this thing. And I don't say that in disrespect to, I'm not meaning the box of church, I'm saying our mentality and how we've maybe always done things or what we always know. I'm not saying those are wrong, but I'm saying when we're reaching this type of demographic, a lot of times we need to drop TNT in there and blow that thing up so that we can really see from a different perspective of what God is doing and how these people need to be reached, because it's different. It's very much so different. And I think that's one of the best things we can do is equip ourselves with an open heart and an open mind to look at things from a different perspective. And I don't by any means mean that as a knock to the church. Please don't hear it that way. There's nothing wrong with the church's approach. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying it just requires something different. Does that make sense? Do you hear my heart in that?
Yeah.
I want to say that delicately and gently because I'm on staff at a church and I'm not knocking the church, but when we go to urban contexts and even like the mentally handicapped context, it has to look different. The message is the same. That never changes. The delivery vehicle has to become different.
Yeah.
And I think having a heart of compassion allows us to open our heart to those things. And check this out. I want to share this with you because, like we just read, if we don't have compassion, then how can the love of God be in our hearts? Listen to this. Something transformative happens when we invite Christ into our life. We know that, right? That's Christian 101. But as we become like him, that's the transformation that happens, by the way. That's still Christian 101. We become like God more and more every day. Our hearts start to mirror his, and our attitudes towards things should begin to change and transform to be like Jesus is. Here's what I mean by that. On many accounts, Jesus met the practical needs. He had compassion on people. Think about it. When he fed the 5,000, that came out like, all these people are here, they need to eat, let's do something. It was a compassion that stirred that motion, right? Jesus had compassion when he wept over Israel, over Jerusalem. So we see compassion in Jesus and his approach to everything, and we need that. And it allows us to meet a practical need, all the while of trying to go deeper because we care about the deeper issue in that person's heart. And so as this transformative thing happens in us, that we accept Christ and invite Christ into our heart, we become like him, and our attitude and our mind should change. Compassion and love needs to start working its way to the surface, right? Again, I'm not saying anything that most of us don't know, but we have to have that approach when we go out, and that's not always easy. People can be difficult. You ever ran into a difficult person when you're giving away food?
Oh, yeah.
Some people you want to boot.
That's right.
Yeah. I'll share this story. My wife just reminded me yesterday. She didn't remind me in a bad way, but we were talking, and we went to serve food at a local, they give away hot meals once a month in downtown Akron. And unbeknownst to me, which is probably a God thing, because I don't know how I would have responded, but a gentleman approached my wife. He was my age, our age, approached her about us, like, including him in our sex life, and was persistent about this. And had I been there, this whole compassion thing, that may have went right out the window, and the lion husband probably would have came out. And but I say that because that's not the right approach. Like, had I heard that, I would have acted in a way that wasn't like Christ, I'm sure, to some degree, unless the Holy Spirit would have been like, I got this, which I hope and pray he would have. But what I'm saying is, even in those toughest of situations, it's seeing the heart of, okay, so this person, I'm used to looking at everybody through a Christian moral standpoint of view of this is the expectations, this is what you don't do, this is what you do and what you don't do, this is okay, this is not okay. I can't hold them to that expectation. They don't know I hold up my phone because there's a Bible on here that I'm reading from. They don't know maybe what Scripture tells them. They don't know our moral standpoint. They don't have our moral compass. And so I'm not excusing that. Like, that needed to be addressed, and it was. But it still requires a compassionate approach because they're coming from a different perspective than we have. And we could take 5 hours and dive into the mindset and untold truths and untold facts about poverty and being on survival mode. And there's trainings for that called Bridges Out of Poverty. That is a great resource. If you've not experienced it, I highly recommend. Maybe even this team could sit through and be taught Bridges Out of Poverty. Oftentimes it's free, but it is a great resource to help you understand the thought process of people living in poverty, because it's different. It's different because it's trained to be different. So I say all that to say, and I've really kind of dragged on about this whole compassion thing, but it's absolutely important. When Matthew Barnett, who's the other guy Darla was referring to, when he launched the LA Dream Center, he did it out of compassion. I think a little bit of frustration too, because his church was failing miserably. So he took his desk. You guys know the story? How the first Dream Center was started? He took his desk from his office. His church was falling apart. It was his dad's or somebody else's church that he inherited, and it wasn't going well. So he took his desk, set it in the front yard of the church, and put a sign on his desk that said, "How can I help you?" And that was the beginning of the Dream Center. He looked for a need and he filled it. And so it came from this heart of compassion because he wasn't just after social justice. There's nothing wrong with meeting needs and social justice, right? Like, as a heart of compassion, that should kind of go hand in hand. But he wasn't just looking for that. By meeting people's needs, he was able to be a tangible expression of God's love in a void, in a huge void. If you've read his book, he talks about gangs being right across the street and being able to minister to them through a funeral. And there's just all these crazy things, but it comes from being God's love tangibly in a void and literally extending the hands and feet of Jesus Christ in his community. And that's what you guys have an opportunity to do. So I spent a long time belaboring this issue of compassion because it really is the foundation of any ministry that we do. And it's not easy. It's really not easy to function on that all the time. But it's something we should strive to do and constantly keep our heart before the Lord malleable, soft, moldable, and ask God to always, always, always keep our heart pure and our motives clean. We've got to, because it's going to get tough when you're dealing with people like that, because they're difficult. There's a sense of entitlement sometimes. You'll see needs that'll break your heart. It runs the whole spectrum of everything. And so it's very important that we keep our heart right before the Lord. And I encourage you, jot this down if you're taking notes. I encourage you, and I challenge you actually, to say this prayer and mean it from your heart. I feel like I'm getting ready to lead you in the sinner's prayer. This is a prayer that I genuinely think changed my life. And I don't remember where I heard it the first time, but somebody encouraged me, and I would do the same to you. Ask God to break your heart for what breaks his, and be ready for the ride. Tell him that. Be ready for the ride. If you genuinely can get your heart in a place of asking God, break my heart for what breaks yours, it's going to change things for you. It did for me, and I'm just a knucklehead trying to figure this thing out, you know. But I think it does something when we posture ourselves in humility, and we want to hurt for what hurts God. We want to value what God values. We want to see through a different lens than maybe what we've always seen before. So y'all with me? Was compassion okay?
Yeah.
All right, I beat it enough. I think we're going to move on. The next thing is care. And I really wrestled with saying this because I know it can walk some lines of maybe people agree or disagree or see differently. But it's something that I feel like God has done in me. And so I just wanted to share with you guys. We have to be careful in the work that we do, because compassion, if we're not careful, can lead us to be blind to things, right? You've heard of blind love. We've all heard of that, right? So here's what I mean is, this is something good to jot down if you're taking notes. Like, we've got to prayerfully ask God to help us see the difference between a hand out and a hand up. Because here's the thing, and again, we went and we gave out food last night, and so I'm not saying anything against that. We have programs that give out food, and there's nothing wrong with that. But we always should be thinking in our heads, as we're meeting these people's needs, how can we help them to have a better future? How can we help them come out of that? How can we help them where they're not dependent on that? Our hope should be, as we're meeting these needs, our hope should be, hey, these regular people that are coming, maybe they've gotten a job and we don't see them anymore because they've gotten a job, or now maybe they come volunteer and they help the people who are in their shoes, and they can minister from a whole new perspective because they were there and now they're on this side. Do you understand what I'm saying? I think when we, that's I call it care because it's really caring about the depth of the person. And not that giving out food doesn't. Please don't hear it that way. And again, I want to be gentle and kind of make sure I'm using the right wording, because I don't want anybody to receive this wrong. It's not that we don't care about them when we meet a need. We do. But let's care about them enough too to help them come out of that. Right? That is the long haul work. That is the we're getting in the trenches and we're walking with people through this thing. Again, nothing wrong with feeding people. Obviously, we just talked about that. We've done it. We do it. But how can we help these people rise out of their situation? And the answer to that, we may not know. That's okay. But how can we encourage them? Maybe through relationship. Excuse me. Maybe through relationship with somebody. We know of a job somewhere. Maybe we can help them. I know last night, I think Rachel, we prayed with a woman who receives food, and she applied for a job at that Family Dollar. So maybe helping her is praying for her, or trying to talk to a manager and like, hey, listen, this woman applied. We see her here all the time. Is there any way you can help her? We want to help her get out. You know, are you tracking with me? So how can we help people have a better hope for their future? How can we equip them? How can we encourage them? How can we educate them? And listen, that may not take place at the mom food giveaway. That's okay. But as this thing and as this ministry that you're developing, as it grows, maybe there's a section of it that includes helping people get jobs. Maybe there's a section of it that includes helping people apply for the right assistance. You see what I'm saying? So that we can help people take a next step towards coming out of poverty. You know, I've heard people say, and I don't know where I fall with this, to be honest. I guess I've fallen enough that it's motivated us to keep it in mind when we're developing programs. But I've heard people say that as people are waiting in lines for soup kitchens and things like that, these huge long lines, right, hundreds of people waiting, that as they're waiting there, it's actually deteriorating their self-worth. Because they're in line to receive a free handout that they're going to have to keep coming back for. They're never going to break that dependency. Now, I'm not bashing and saying we should never do soup kitchens at all. I'm not saying that, but what I am saying is as I heard that, I thought through it enough to say, Lord, okay, if we have to have a line for food, how can we help bring people's worth up? I'm not saying having a line for food is bad, but maybe now we think through, okay, if people are waiting in line, and that's a possibility, what can we do? Is there games we can play? Is there enough people where we can have conversation? Is there something we can implement in this program that as people are waiting in line is building them up and helping them feel valued and not doing the opposite, if that's a potential? Do you understand what I'm saying? You see the difference? And so I'm not going to beat this one too much because that's something you need to think through and plan through and develop over the long haul of this thing. But it's something where you can look at what you're already doing and say, okay, so maybe I don't fully buy that people are losing self-esteem by standing in line, but if that's a potential, what are some ways that maybe we could help that? It's definitely worth taking a look at if we care about these people and their well-being and their value, because they have value in God's eyes. They're His children. There's value there. There's worth. And the last thing we want to do is accidentally, without knowing, deteriorate that. And so all I say is, it's this. You've heard the adage, give a man a fish, feed him for a day, teach him to fish, feed him for a lifetime, right? One of the things, and I will refer to our Dream Center, one of the things that we've put right in our mission statement is that we want to do both. We want to do both. As much as we can help it, we don't want anybody to go hungry on our watch. But we don't want to just leave them there, coming back week after week. We want to help them rise ahead of that. We want to teach them to fish and give them the fish while they need it. So that's just something that we've really tried to shape our organization and our ministry around. We try to keep that in mind. Do we have lines? Yes. At our block parties, people mob the food line, and so they're standing there, they're ready to get their food. But one thing that we've done is we have roamers that float around and they talk to people. That's their whole job. Like, hey, go talk to somebody. We have picnic tables where people go eat. And so we have people that clean up the tables. Well, their job, guess what it is? Talk to people. Like, as you're cleaning a table, talk to people. Help them feel valued and like they matter, like they're worth, that they're not invisible. They're not just here for a handout and they're going to leave. We care about them. And that's one thing that I witnessed last night at the Mom Ministry that blessed my heart as well is you guys know them by name. There's relationship there. And it's not just transactional where they come get something and they come back next time. Sure, some may be, and you're always going to have that. Some people don't want to talk. And there's not much you can do about that besides keep loving them until they decide they do want to talk. But I was blessed by the fact, even watching Darla and you guys just know people by name, there's conversation, it's asking about jobs, asking about life, asking about how they're doing, asking about this, talking about that. You can tell there's relationship there. And that is huge. Relationship is huge. So that's the second thing. Okay. Let's just think through those things and how we can help people have a fish today if they're hungry, but teach them to fish to help them for their lifetime. Amen? Dragging with me?
Yeah.
Any thoughts or questions so far? I feel like I'm yakking a lot.
I think the care aspect also builds trust.
Absolutely.
Which gets eroded
Yeah.
in poverty.
Yeah.
We have conversations with people who live in tent cities and, they come by and they say, oh yeah, well, so-and-so got into our tent and they stole all our stuff. So it's like, they steal from each other and, they try to live in the tent like they would live in their house with doors that lock, but, they put a lock on their zipper of their tent. And I'm like, really? It doesn't take much to get past that. And so it's like, so just to be able to acknowledge them, acknowledge where they are, have compassion, talk to them. I can't fix all their problems. I learned that a long time ago, and I don't try to. But what I have learned is that I can pray for them to learn to deal with it and to maybe see that there's another way they can go.
Yeah.
But it does, it builds trust. And, going back to what you were talking about Mark Barnett and the gang people. One of the things that I have pleasantly discovered with this ministry that I didn't expect was the relationship that I built with the people in the grocery stores who give us the food.
Yeah.
And that is where God blessed me the most, really, because, you know, I built a relationship with those people. I saw them every week at a certain time. I got to ask them about their family. One woman's son OD'd, and I got to do his funeral. And I didn't know any of these people. That was the scariest day of my life. I'm like, okay, all these people are together. This is the last time we're gonna talk about this person. You know, it's like this. But Tim, my pastor, said this is a great time, you know, to share Christ with them. And so I just went in there like really different, and it was like so tense, and everybody was out in the parking lot smoking before they went in. So when they finally got in there, it was like so tense, and I just totally did an unfuneral, and we just talked about this person and let people tell stories, and that just made everybody feel so much better. And then I was able to bring them around and talk to them about Christ, but you know, I don't know this guy, and chances are he probably wasn't a Christian, but his mom was, and you know, so I was there to minister to her and her family, and it just, God just really showed me that it's not every aspect of every ministry is important, from conception to execution, and all the people and all the groups, all the people in between are really important. And that's probably why it's so hard for a lot of people to let go of control, because it's like, I've built a relationship with that person at that store, don't screw it up, you know, it's like that kind of thing. And you know, we're working on a new store right now, Diana and I are, and they're messed up. I mean, that store is just messed up, but we've been praying for them, and things are actually getting better there, and I'm starting to build a rapport with them too, and so I'm starting to see things happen there that are getting better, and that's a blessing too, and that those people need Christ just as much.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And there's something, and I was gonna share it later, but I'll share it now because it fits perfect. This is one thing I try to share with our missions teams all the time is anytime we go on a mission trip, so anytime we have a ministry, right, whatever this ends up being, there's always 3 people groups you're gonna minister to. Obviously the people there, so we call it the locals. When you send a team to Kenya, you're gonna minister to the Kenyans, right? You're gonna minister to the locals or the people that are kind of the target audience. So in this case, it would be people who need food security with the Mod ministry. We're gonna minister to them, right? But also, we're gonna minister to, so we always say the missionaries, which are the hosts when we go there. So in this case, this is the stores, the people who are providing the food, the people who are giving the supplies that you have a relationship with, like Darla was just saying. But lastly, you can't forget this, we minister to each other all the time. All the time. In any outreach that we do, how we respond to things, how we react to things, in stressful situations, if it's hot and sweaty and nasty, and just all those things. There's 3 people groups we always minister to, and so we try to keep that in mind, and I don't always do great at that, especially if it's hot and sweaty and nasty and I'm edgy, and you know, like, I can work on that, but there's always 3 people groups that we minister to, and we have to remember that, because sometimes we'll be so focused on them that we forget us, or so focused on us that we forget them, and it really hits all facets, and there's a lot of cool collateral things that happen because of that. For us, that looks like the manager of Woolworth Arlington Homes, which is the community we reach. Like, the people of that community are our target audience, but we've built a great relationship with the manager and her staff through this, and we have a chance to minister to them by how we steward the permissions they've given us, and just in our relationship with them. And so I always try to check in, like, hey, did we clean up well? Were things done to your expectations? How was it? I've offered, I don't know how many times, bring her coffee. She always says no. I'm like, there's no strings attached. I just want to bring you coffee, you know? But all the ways that we can minister to each other, and then our team, I always try to pour into our team. And you guys, some of you are that team, some of you might lead a team, some of you maybe aren't on the team yet, but just know that, like, there's ministry value there. Like, you have worth and value too, and you have something to offer, and something that you can give, and a gifting that God has given you that's unique to you that nobody else can fulfill. And so it takes all sides of this thing to make it happen. I always tell our team this, and I mean it. Like, it's a cliche thing to say, but I always try to stress how much I mean it, because I mean it from the bottom of my heart. Like, we are better together. If it were up to just me, this thing would have failed a long time ago. That's just the truth. That's not false humility, that is truth. That's a reckoning of truth. We're better together. So the last thing that, really kind of the last C that I'm going to share with was connection, is connection. And really, like, the ultimate hope in all this is that we can connect people to Jesus, right? That's why we're here. His love has crazy, radically impacted our life, and we want people to know about that. That's why we're here. And so really the question then comes down to, how can we connect people to the Big C church? Not this church, not that church over there because they have a cooler Sunday morning, not that church because their kids' program. Throw all that out the window. Because to those people, they don't care. They don't have the church background. They're not used to Burger King churches, having your way or I'll go to the next. They're not used to that. I'm telling you. Some of us can sometimes have that mentality. I fall guilty of that myself. They're not used to that. If they walk into a place and it has nothing for sound and lighting, but they feel loved, they're coming back because that is a void in their life. And that is what the Big C church, us together, can offer these people. That's our role. So we need to connect people to Jesus, but to the Big C church as well, to the lifeline of the family of the bride of Christ. That's the hope. And so I just lost my place in my notes. And guys, what I want to encourage you with this is, it is kind of simple, really, but sometimes we get anxious. Is we've got to be okay with the long game. In these types of settings, when we're dealing with urban folks, when we're dealing with these demographics, and we're dealing with poverty, we've got to be okay with the long game. It's a marathon, not a sprint. Here's what I mean by that. When you're dealing with, and we've touched on this a little bit, when you're dealing with cultures of poverty and you're dealing with that mentality, trust is fleeting, if not gone already. And Darla touched on that. It's just a reality. There's
generations of
it is. It is. It is. And trust is non-existent. Here's why. Because everything is transitional, everything is cyclical, everything is in and out. There's no solidity. Everything comes and goes, nobody stays. Everything is very fluid when you're in situations of poverty because everything revolves around surviving. You gotta get food. And sometimes that means you gotta rip off your friend. So you're not gonna have that friend because they're not gonna deal with it, or they ripped you off. So you see, like, there's just so many layers involved with this thing that factor into this reality that trust doesn't usually stick around. And if so, like, that's why gangs thrive, because there's trust there. I'm not justifying it, but that's why. There's trust. That's their family. They can depend on these people.
Depend on them for what? What do gangs do for them?
I'm sorry.
For them, it's everything.
Really?
It's a sense of belonging.
It is.
They know that this person has their back and they're going to accept them for who they are no matter what.
Yeah, they kill for each other, literally.
It's their source of income. It's their source of food. Sometimes, literally, it's their source of family. It provides so much that is missing in their life.
And I'd say it even goes beyond family, it's a tribe.
Yeah.
Which is something our culture has really lost the sense of.
Yeah.
And so it's bigger than just little pockets of people that we consider like nuclear family. It's a big extended family that shares a culture, shares a way of life. And so they need that.
Kind of building on that too, we always hear about community, build your community up, that's their community.
Yeah.
It like she's saying, it goes back to you're sharing a culture and you don't have to worry about someone backstabbing you. And if you do, then that's your life and everyone else is gonna rally behind you if that other person backstabs you somehow.
And that becomes an identity too. Nobody else understands this, but that's fine because we are who we are.
It really comes down to loyalty and trust. And here's why I use that example. Like, sometimes we have this message, that's the ultimate hope. We have this message of salvation, right? But sometimes if we're not careful, we bulldoze people because they don't trust us enough to receive it. And so what I'm saying is not that we shouldn't share this message. I'm absolutely not saying that. I think we need to be sensitive in how and when and use tact when it comes to it. Here's the thing. Sometimes we can be anxious and wanting to lead people to Jesus. Like, I just got to lead them to Jesus. Like, the first time I meet him, I need to get him saved because I might not see him again. Anybody ever hear that growing up? It was like, if I don't do it, they're going to hell and that's my fault. Because I didn't take the one opportunity I might ever have in my life. I don't think it works that way. And people in poverty, I don't think it does because they're not going to trust you. Now, there might be an emotional response, but something lasting and true life change, I think, happens through trust and relationship that only happens over time. Listen to this. I want to share this with you. We may not lead someone to Jesus for a while, like saying the sinner's prayer, you know? But if you show the love of God, you are leading them to Jesus every day. Please don't underestimate that. Please don't underestimate that. And we have to trust that God is sovereign. God's working in this thing more than we might know, and it doesn't, there's just an element of like, God, okay, I'm going to wait for the moment that you've provided, and I'm going to seize that moment. I'm not going to be passive, and I'm not going to ignore an opportunity to lead somebody to you, but I'm not going to force it either. So Holy Spirit, give me discernment. Help me to see when that time is and what that looks like, and give me the right words so that when I lead these people to you, it's lasting and it takes root. And not do they just hear it, but they listen. There's a difference in hearing and listening. People will hear us, but they won't listen until we've earned their trust. And so really what it comes down to, guys, is relationship has to be essential. And whatever your ministry looks like, I would just so encourage you to evolve it around relationship. Whatever it is. Yeah.
I think what's even really important is you saying, like, not to push the whole issue of Christ when you first meet someone, but these people with not having trust, they're not going to listen to words. They're going to watch your actions before anything.
Absolutely.
So your actions are going to speak louder than your words.
Yeah. And here's what can happen too. Here's what can happen too. You make them feel like a project.
Yeah.
Like, I only matter if I'm a tick on their salvation chart. You know, it's like, is that it, or do we really value them as a person like God does? And we hope that one day we can celebrate their salvation? Absolutely. That's never, like, please don't hear me saying we ever put that on the back burner. I don't mean that. But what I'm saying is we love them as a person, whether they reject our message or not. And we care about them as God's child. And we pray that one day God gives us the opportunity to celebrate their salvation. Right? So you see what I'm saying? It's a little different approach. What are you saying?
Going along with what she said, something that we've noticed with our block parties that we do monthly, the first it was the first summer that we actually did it, where we do our block parties in the middle of, there's a playground and then all the apartments around. Parents would send their kids out, and the parents would sit and watch. Some were smoking weed, some were just hanging out, some were inside not doing anything, but they would just sit and watch. Probably the last one of the summer we had, parents were out and like engaging and like helping out and helping us set up and tear down and like all that stuff. And then the winter it was our first winter, so we were trying to find out where it was a good place, because sometimes outside's not the best. But we actually found out that we were supposed to stay outside. But when we came back to being outside, the parents started coming back again and coming in, and like the picnic tables, we purchased those, huge investment for us. So it's just the trust factor and just making sure, like, are you guys gonna stay here? You're not just gonna leave again? Like, so building that relationship with them is key.
Absolutely. And guys, I would say, I'll come right to you, Nico. I would say whatever your ministry looks like, develop your ministry, make it scalable so that you're there for the long haul. It can't, listen, because people are so used to things being transient in their life, we have to be against that norm. So whatever we do, make sure that your mindset going into it is, we're not leaving until God says it's time to leave. We need to make this to where if it's one or two people, we can sustain it. And I'm not saying you scale everything small and never hope for anything big, but I'm saying have the mindset that whatever you start isn't ending. Because these people need something they can depend on, and that's what's what I'm looking for? I feel like it's gonna be right here. That's consistent. That's what I'm looking for. They need consistency because that goes against everything they're used to. And so whatever ministry you launch or are a part of, make it for the long haul. Because that is where you're gonna have the true dividends. That's where you're gonna get the true worth of things. When people see that you're not going anywhere. We had a lady just a couple months ago. She came up to me out of nowhere. She's like, I've watched you guys at these block parties, and you're here, whether it's raining, snowing, sunshine, it doesn't matter, you're here. She's like, I want you to know that we value that. To me, that was a grand slam. That's what we want people, and I'm not saying that to boast about ourselves, like, we froze to death over the winter, like, it was cold, and we had like 5 people sometimes, but to me, it's like, in what our goals and objectives for the block party are, like, that's a home run.
Yeah.
That's a game changer. Because now they know that we're committed. Well, guess what? God just swung that door wide open for ministry because she trusts our heart. She knows why we're there. And so now I'm hoping and praying that in the coming months we can have more conversation, and ultimately God has just flung the door way open for ministry. So,
Not only that we're committed, that we actually love them.
yeah, yeah. Randy, what was it?
Well, this is something that's kind of fresh and new from God, you know, for myself, so I think it applies, and so hopefully I hope I do a well job being clear. But in regards to relationship and trust, you had kind of said this as far as people feeling like a project, and I think the thing that overcomes that, it really starts with our perspective, and that we're not just there, like, relationship is huge, but it's even then, why are we building a relationship?
Yeah.
And something that God has really stirred in my heart lately, very fresh, is the mutuality of what He intended for all of us to have. Like, it's not just I serve someone, but it's a mutualness. Now, in serving, you know, people who are in poverty and whatnot, it's not as though we're helping, you know, we're serving them something so that they give something back to us. But it's much greater than that. It's that it's a mutual relationship of the kingdom in general, that I am helping this person, and in time, they will give back to the kingdom in their own way. When we look at people like that, I think it changes the way that, you know, we're serving future servers, in a sense, and not just, I hope you get your life together. I want that, and you know, but to me it changes the perspective, because our culture divides up so much, and we become where, you know, this whole American dream that all of us are shooting for, even those in poverty, if they had a chance, would maybe want, and it's very independent. I can do all of this for myself. I don't think God ever intended us to be independent. He wants us to have this mutual relationship with all people. And I think when we look at the people that we're serving and that we're helping with that way, it's like, I'm gonna love you, and I hope in time you either, it would be great for our relationship to continue where I get something from you as well, but not in a self-serving way, obviously.
Absolutely.
But hopefully you just pass it on.
Even with that, if you can help, what she was saying earlier, you know, there's just cycles. You know, you may be breaking a cycle for that person. You may not see it, you know, for the next generation, but 3 generations down the road, it's gonna be different because that person interacted with you and decided to change something about
Absolutely.
themselves.
That's why the gang thing works so much. It's a mutual relationship. It is a mutual environment. I bring this to the table, someone else brings that. I didn't have it, but they do, and we can thrive. You know,
Better
and that's-
together.
and that's truly the community, that tribe aspect.
Yeah, and I think Randy, what you're hitting on is so good. Like, that really comes down to, like you said, like, not making people feel like a project. I think people, especially people in poverty who have lived on survival mode, they're very smart. They may not be educated, but they're incredibly smart. They know when they're a project. They can sense genuineness, and they can sense people that are fake. They can sense it a mile away, and they won't want anything to do with something that's not genuine. But the things that are, they'll gravitate towards, or they'll try to take advantage of the fake things because they know they're not real. But if we can offer them something genuine, then, I mean, if they know that they're not a project, but that we genuinely care about them, that changes the game drastically. That drastically changes the game, and that in itself can build value and worth through the roof, to know that they really matter beyond a number. You know, and there's reporting, I get it, like, we have to report things, you know, like we do it too. We count how many meals we serve, how many bags of food we give out. But for people to know they value beyond that, tears down walls like you would not believe. That's why we wanted to endure the winter and go there every month, regardless. As long as there wasn't a blizzard and we could actually get there, we went there because we wanted them to know that we value them. Listen, like, we know it's going to take a while for us to earn your trust, but we value you, and we're not going anywhere because you matter and we care. That's why we're really here, you know? And it really comes down to this, guys. And I'll start to wrap up here. I think we're longer than we anticipated, but let me find this thing real quick here. People need trust. Like we already said that, but listen to this. Trust is earned through relationship. Relationship happens through consistency. Consistency happens through faithfulness. And all of this happens over time. So I would encourage you, in your quest to share Christ and help people understand the kingdom and all the awesomeness that's involved with that, don't be discouraged, don't be anxious, but trust the Holy Spirit. God, help me to see when the time's just right. Help me to have the right approach. Help me not to be anxious. Help me to celebrate salvation. We want to celebrate people coming to Christ. We do. But it's all about approach. And for these people that we're serving, it matters. So whatever the ministry looks like, know that. Know that. If you don't value them as a person, they're never going to value your message. That's just where it's at, because they can spot it coming. I bet you every person has been preached at. I can almost guarantee it. In our country, at this day and age, probably every person you come in contact with has been preached at. Do they need that again, or do they need someone's genuine, authentic love that models this thing that they've been hearing about before they have to hear about it, right? So last encouragement I want to leave you with, these are our core values at the Akron Dream Center. And I want to share them with you, not to toot our own horn, but because I think it directly applies, and it's something that we've really tried to hash together. That we try to share this at every block party, because we have a rotation of volunteers that are always coming in new and fresh, and people understand what we're about. And really, the heart of these core values comes down, we look at the person that we want to reach and serve, and we say, what would help them the most? How can we love them best? How can we reach them best? And that's where we came up with this. So 4 things real quick. And I would encourage you to whenever you're developing your ministry, whatever that looks like, whatever it's called, keep these things in mind to some degree. This isn't like the exhaustive list of what your core values should be. Don't receive it that way. It's things that we've learned and things we're passionate about in our heart. The first one, we've given them all fancy titles, so that as volunteers come, it's easy to remember, but throw the title on, it doesn't matter. The first one is live upside down. Jesus modeled this best because he lived an upside-down life of humility, selfless service, and unmerited love. As a result, he changed the world. The King of Kings, the creator of everything, completely flipped it upside down and came down and washed disciples' feet. It doesn't get much more upside down than that. From our perspective, he had no business doing that. But from his perspective, it was everything. So, selfless service, unmerited love, that's what we need to extend to these people. Be real. We already talked about this. People can spot a fake. It's one of our values because we recognize this. We value transparency and authenticity in all we do, genuinely caring for the people we serve. What we do has to come from a genuine love for our city. If you don't love your city, man, get on your knees and ask God to help you love your city. Because you have to. This has to come from a place of genuine love. The third one is earn the right. This speaks to that long distance game we were talking about. True hope comes in the good news of Jesus Christ. Our approach to sharing this message is vital. It cannot come from a position of above those we serve. Hear that, because that's hard sometimes. We have this rescue mentality if we're not careful, that we're the saviors going to extend our hand down into the pit to pull people out. I think Jesus calls us to get into the pit right with him. I'm not talking about we need to become a drug addict to help the drug addict. Like, that would be really twisting what Paul said, I became all things to all people. But we've even tried to change our language. Like, the people we serve, we don't say that anymore. We try to say our neighbors. It speaks something entirely different, right? So we want to earn the right. It can't come from a position of above those we serve, but from walking side by side in the trenches of life, earning the right to share that hope. We want to earn the right because we believe when we do, it's going to stick, right? The last one is this, all for one is what we call it, and it's just a value of diversity. We all have something unique to offer. You look around this room, everybody has a different set of giftings. Everybody has a different past, a different background. Everybody has different education, different attributes, different gifts. But you put all that together, it paints an incredible picture. And it does something really cool. And we believe that we're stronger together and we're really better together working for the one, right? So that's our 4 core values, and it's stuff that we've milled over and we want our volunteers to understand. And so I just hope maybe that's an encouragement as you are developing your ministry and developing your work and your efforts and whatever this looks like. You just go with compassion, care, connection, and just love people really well. That's what it's about. If there's nothing else we can do in Christ, we can love people really well. It's not easy, but it's simple, right? There's a difference. But Holy Spirit, we're empowered to do that. So that's all I got. I hope it was worthwhile, good, healthy, but maybe some Q&A, Darla, is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. I was gonna say, you know, our next section, I don't know, how many of you were planning to stay for the next portion? Oh, good, because I'm making bacon, so.
Everybody's staying now.
I'm getting ready to go put it in the oven. We have plenty of stuff to make sandwiches, and as we've been talking here, and I realize, there's so much value just in this room, that, you know, don't be afraid if the nuts and bolts sounds more permanent sounding, because it's probably not. I think it's us trying to put our brain around how to put this on paper so that we can process it and we can get other people involved. And so a lot of you bring lots of diversity. Stephanie, you guys, I'm so glad you all came, because you bring a whole new effort, attention to a need that it needs to be addressed. It's not. And I think that it's not a mistake that whoever's here is here. And Randy, you guys, the people that you're serving here in South Berkeley, there are people who need to catch a vision so they can go and volunteer. And I think that's your role. I mean, I don't know, I got goosebumps all over you. I'm speaking that into you, that your job is to train volunteers. Because people need to learn that they do have, and they find self-value in helping others. And so we all come from different, and that's the great part, is that we are all coming from different parts of the four corners of the county or wherever. And so I would encourage everybody to stay. We've got plenty of food. If you can. If you can't, it's okay. It's not like you're gonna miss out on anything. We'll find a way to make sure everybody gets a copy of it. And I've already posted a link to the book Bridges Out of Poverty on the event page. And we're recording this, so we'll try to make it available as well. And we can probably try to at least audio record the next section. So like if you miss it and you wanna be part of it. And then hopefully we'll follow this up with another meeting soon. How do you guys feel about that? Sound good? All right, so why don't you do Q&A, and I'm gonna go for
Yeah.
bacon.
Darla, I was feeling the same thing as far as
Good.
stick around.
Yeah, everybody stick around, please.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, guys, let me just preface Q&A by saying I'm not a master, I'm not an expert. I'll try to answer as best I can, and we're learning as we go. That's all we can do, right? So, yeah. What's up?
So, whenever you started, you were kind of like under the umbrella of your church, and now you're a separate entity. Is that how?
Yeah.
So, have you found that your donor mix, like, could you speak to that some?
Yeah.
Like, are you able to get, by separating from a church, is that bringing in people that are like more like community activists and people who want to support the community? Are they more willing to give to what you're doing
Sure.
because of that? Can you talk about that mix and what that looks like?
Absolutely. So let me say this. I could never brag on our church enough. We didn't separate from our church out of anything negative, any problems. We were incredibly blessed. Our pastor is awesome, and I'm not just saying that because this thing's recorded and maybe, I don't know. I truly mean that. He came alongside us and said, how can we help, what can we do? And totally encouraged us in something brand new outside the box of what we were used to. And our church got behind it. Our church has invested, supports it in many different ways. We couldn't have asked for a better launching platform from our church. They were incredible. And so we did start connected to the church. We started a fictitious name, a DBA, in the state of Ohio, so that it was actually recognized as an entity before we became a nonprofit. So it was Medina Foursquare Church doing business as Akron Dream Center. And not that you even have to do that, but that allowed us to carry this name, Akron Dream Center, because, to answer your question, Nathan, there are donors who won't give to churches but will give to nonprofits, even faith-based nonprofits. It's really kind of weird, but it's true, you know. And so not to say that Huntington Bank, which is a bank in Akron, they moved in kind of prominently a couple years back, and they're very big on community orientation and serving the community. And so not to say that they wouldn't give to religious organizations, because I believe they do, but with us being a nonprofit, they actually send a steady stream of volunteers every month. They have like 6 to 10 volunteers that come help at our block parties, and if we were a church doing it, I don't know that door would have opened. I'm not saying it wouldn't have, but I am saying there are some opportunities that come about because of legal reasons, and you know, even if you have a business owner who would love to support a church, they might be pigeonholed because of other religious things that they can't or choose not to, or whatever that looks like. So there are certainly some doors that have opened because of that. And so, but it wasn't birthed out of anything negative or anything like that. There's a difference in government, really. Like, you have a church council, and in nonprofit world, you have a governing board of directors. So things kind of function a little different, but once we really kind of separated, because as we were growing, resources and everything just got more complex. Like, my wife, she's one of the admin girls at the church, and so she kind of sees firsthand, like, it gets more complex in the books and trying to make sure everything's accountable and looks right, and that we're being good stewards, and it gets more difficult to do that as things get more complex and you have monies flowing in different places, and like somebody donated a truck to us, a box truck, and so you've got that, you're trying to flow through, and it's under the church's name, but we're in Akron, so if something happens, as the church gets sued, so it's all those different things that you kind of have to start thinking through as things grow and get more complex, and so that was really the nature of why we really felt like we needed to become our own thing, and it was done with a lot of conversation with our pastor, just being transparent and honest, and hearing him hearing us. It was really awesome to walk through that, and I honor him a lot more because of it. You know, I honored him before, but I really honor him because of how they've helped us. So, does that answer your question?
Yeah. Have you found any limiting factors from, like you were talking about the bank sending people, like, is there ever any conflict between your core values as far as representing Christ?
Sure.
And then now you're doing something that's more of a community-based thing, where you're trying to reach the community, but now you have a volunteer that doesn't necessarily represent
Right.
the image that you're trying to portray.
Yeah. So the short answer is we haven't yet. I say yet, like, Lord, please don't let that ever be ever. I say yet, though, recognizing that is always a potential, you know, and we just trust God in the process. But one thing that we've made very clear, even with our contact from Huntington Bank, she's awesome, and she completely gets it. But I told her from day one, like, look, you know, we're faith-based, but here's our core values, and this is our approach. We're not going to preach to anybody. It's not what we're called to do specifically. But we are going to live this thing out, and we do pray with people, and if people have questions, we don't shy away. Like this is who we are, and as long as you guys are okay with it, you're welcome to. And so when we pray each time before we serve. Like before we do our block party, we get together, we have a team huddle. We'll talk about who's serving where. We'll talk about our core values. Then we end by praying. And I'll just say it out of a courtesy and honoring those people. I'll say, hey, look, you don't have to pray with us. We're not going to force you or tell you to leave if you don't. But this is what we do, and so we're going to pray.
Sure.
And we've never had anybody back out. And to be honest, like, I think that's where, like we talked about those 3 people groups that we minister to, like, that's a whole new people group we get to minister to that was collateral. I didn't even anticipate that. And that's a really cool opportunity. And so, you know, our core values allow us to do that. And I don't really feel like some people be like, well, if they didn't want to pray, you should just have them leave any. No, it's all good. I'm not jamming down their throat, but we're going to live it, and they're going to catch it one day. You know, that's our hope and our prayer. So we haven't had any issues yet, and I pray to God that we never do. But you know,
transparency is.
That's the thing. That's the thing. Is we're unapologetically faith-based.
Yeah.
I won't apologize for it. It's who we are. That's not going to change for anybody or any amount of money. Now, there's some times where how you navigate that legally, but as long as we're transparent and they get it up front, then I think that can help prevent some of those things. So yeah, and we welcome. Like, I hope we get more unsaved people that serve with us. I love it, man, because then it does. And we value them too. They have a lot of great ideas. And I will say this: a lot of people that come to serve at those things have some sort of faith background, so it's not foreign to them. You know, people of faith are drawn to those type of opportunities, and so we get a lot of people who aren't foreign to it. So that helps a little bit. Yeah.
So, let's say somebody gets saved at one of your events. Do you have a way to disciple those folks? Are you pushing them to other churches? Or you just like you yourself or somebody else on the team connecting with them? Like, how does that work?
Sure. So that's actually something that we're trying to be intentional on really putting effort towards this year. Last year, the name of the game was just getting our footing, figuring out what we're
Sure.
doing. So this year, we really want to figure out what that looks like. And I think the right now approach is that we would connect it to a local church.
Yeah, 'cause yours is so far away.
Yeah, and we don't necessarily at this point want to be the local church. In that sense, like we are the church in motion, and
Right.
actually we are the people. But we don't want to be like the Sunday service. Like
Right.
we don't want to fulfill that role in the community at this point. And so what we will try to do is have a relationship with churches that we can partner with, and we have one that's down the road, Cornerstone, a different Cornerstone, that is a great church, and so that's kind of our liaison, if you will. What we hope to do is we really love the missional community approach to church, and it's something that we are kind of organically allowing God to do already, and so our hope is that maybe in that community itself,
Right, they might have
we
that.
could have a missional community that meets there with these folks, and really is that discipleship piece. So we're trying to be strategic. There's a church literally right behind Wilmington Arlington Homes, and I say this from a true and honest heart, and a good heart, that if all of the people in that community were looking for that kind of church, that church would be overflowing.
Yeah.
And so I don't say that to belittle that church. I'm saying just maybe those people are looking for a different approach, or maybe there's something else that would draw them, or whatever the case is. I don't know what that church is doing or isn't doing. I'm sure it's a great church, but
They're not going there now.
they're not going there now. So why is that? So the last thing that we want to do is go in and make another church doing the same exact thing. We'd rather help another church,
Right.
and that's our heart. So. Or if we do something, maybe it could look a little different to catch people that church isn't. You know what I'm saying? So,
How are you, can you talk a little bit about how you're building relationships with other churches? Like, are you
Yeah.
just connecting relationally with pastors, or how is that working?
slower than I hoped.
That's how it seems like.
So yeah, and some of that's my own fault. I've just had so many things that I'm trying to do. Like when you start an organization, there's a ton of red tape,
Yeah.
and I didn't realize what I was signing up for. I'm like, oh man. But so I've been kind of bogged down with some of that stuff. So it's been slower to go on my end. But yeah, so my hope is to relationally connect with them. I have some. There is this, and I don't think it's just our city specific, but you do run into some territorial issues sometimes of people who are like, this is my turf, go away. And not that we've received that specifically, but I've heard stories of some churches in our area kind of having that. Maybe not go away, but like, hey, we got this. Like, we'll take care of it, kind of thing. And that's a shame, because really, like, we're all just on the same team.
Sure.
And our hope isn't to go in and steal their congregants. Like, that's not our heart at all. We'd hope to increase their congregants, maybe, I don't know, but so yeah, it's definitely got to be a relational thing. And I need to do better at that myself in my role. I just haven't taken the time to do it. But we do have some relationships, and it's really just by word of mouth. Like, the relationship that we have now came from one of our board members. It's a church that he knew. He connected us with their executive director, and it was just awesome. Like, it was a God chemistry. Like, my wife and I sat down with her and just shared our heart, and it was just an instant connection with that church. And that's continuing to grow and develop, and it's really cool. But it's all through like word of mouth and just, hey, can we have coffee? Can I share my heart? Yep. And it's really uncomfortable for me. I don't, yeah. But, yeah, absolutely.
You said you were teaching life skills to young people.
Mhm.
Do you do that like once a week at a certain spot, or how do you do that?
Sure. So what we do, it may be unique, it may not be unique, I'm not sure. In our city, they have what they call alternative schools, and it's for kids who have gotten maybe kicked out or expelled from public school. And these alternative schools are ways for them to get reacclimated back. So if a kid goes to jail, he's missed a lot of school while he's in jail, incarcerated. And so when he comes out, he'll go to these schools so that he can get caught up. And the hope and the goal is to send them back into APS, Akron Public Schools, to thrive and finish school. So a lot of these kids have behavioral issues, a lot of these kids don't even want to be at school, they miss too much school. So I say all that because it paints a unique challenge for what we do. Because we do go in once a week to this school. The class sizes are small, it's usually like 6 to 8 students in a class. And we'll put 2 classes together, so we'll have anywhere from, depending who comes to school that day, we'll have anywhere from 6 to 15 kids. We never know how many's coming. We never know how many are gonna show up. It's always a revolving door. So we always have new kids that have no idea what we're doing. And we have maybe 1 or 2 who have been there before and kind of know what we're about. So it paints unique challenges for us. And we're really gonna sit down with the staff of the school and find out ways that we can improve this. A lot of the kids don't want to be there, so they just cause problems when we're doing the life skill stuff because they don't want to be there. We'll meet in one of their conference rooms. It's on Fridays. This specific school, they'll do incentive days on Fridays. So if the kids do their work all week and are caught up and are doing well, Friday's an incentive day where they can have gym time or whatever. And we get factored into that. So sometimes we interrupt gym time and kids don't want to sit through more school and miss gym time. So that's kind of the model now. We go in once a week and we'll have a topic that we work through that we brought in Huntington Bank to teach financial literacy. We did mock interviews with these kids. We brought in professionals from the community, did mock interviews. We've went over character issues, really just try issues on being good citizens and voting and laws and understanding that, and really try to walk through the whole spectrum of, hey, when you graduate high school or when you're done with school or whatever happens, life's gonna smack you in the face, ready or not. And so let's help you get ready for this thing. So that's really been our platform, but it's had a lot of challenges. Mostly because the students just don't realize the need. It's not like we're teaching them calculus that maybe one day they'll use, maybe one day they won't. These are things that tomorrow they're gonna use. Next week, next month, next year, they're gonna use. And it's gonna be frustrating sometimes to help them understand the need and how important it is and help them to see the value in it. So I feel like that was a really long roundabout way to answer your question. I'm sorry for that. But that's what we do.
Well, see, I substitute teach and I do mostly in behaviorally disturbed classes.
Okay, yeah. So you understand exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
A whole other culture for kids, too. They're basically the kids of the adults you're serving,
Yeah.
And that's kind of the trajectory they're going, because they've dealt with so much trauma, and
Yeah.
they don't trust, and it's one more person where you don't know my life, you don't need to be coming into my home, and who are you to tell me X, Y, and Z, I got it all together kind of thing. So it's, relationship building if possible, that's where it's gonna be the key. You can't connect with a child if you don't love the child, plain and simple, and you gotta reach their heart before you can teach them.
So you go into we have
We do.
Pikeside Alternative School.
Okay. Yeah, so I would go into there, like I said, my old coach that ended up being the executive director, he was the in for all this, complete God thing. And so the way it works there, we'll go into the school on a Friday, 10 o'clock, we have from 10 to 11, we'll get there 9:30 set up, we set up in the conference room. These kids have case managers that are with them and they deal with behavioral stuff. So they have teachers and they have case managers. So the case managers bring their students down, they sit with them to correct any behavioral issues because it gets a little crazy sometimes. And then we basically go through whatever curriculum, we try to play games with the kids. We don't let it be an hour of straight teaching because they're gonna disappear 40 minutes ago. So we'll come in, we'll start with a game. We try to do group activities, we try to switch it up, keep these kids as engaged as possible. Some kids will literally come in, put their heads down and tell you they're going to sleep. There's nothing I can do about that. I'm not there to discipline them, so we just roll with it. We just all right, whatever. We just gotta kind of overlook it. And we've seen some value in it. We've seen some kids that have gotten stuff out of it. These kids are smarter than they think, and then they give themselves credit for it. They track with us. They just don't want to do it. They're lazy or whatever it is. Whatever it is that's getting in their way. Maybe they're not lazy. Maybe they're tired because they're staying up watching a 2-year-old brother or sister because mom's out working or whatever's going on. They're tired and they're exhausted, and there's so many different scenarios going on. I should have said they're lazy. That's rarely the case. I said it jokingly, but it was a funny joke when I think about it. Anyhow.
Sometimes they're grieving, that I know in the school that Rachel teaches, a lot of students that have a lot of problems, that they lost a parent.
Yeah.
And they're grieving and they just can't deal with at their age, they can't deal with the reality of trying to learn all that stuff.
They're in survival mode themselves.
Yeah. We have kids that literally live on the streets, that they come to school, barely, and their homes on the streets. One kid told me, my mom doesn't want me living on the streets, but I do what I want to do and live on the street. Wow. it goes well for you. I mean, all you can do is just try to help them see a different way, you know? But yeah, so we'll go in and we'll do that for about an hour every week when they have school on Fridays. If they're off on a Friday, we miss that week. But Becky, if you're interested, a resource for you maybe is the curriculum we use is called Bridges Out. It's called Overcoming Obstacles, is what we use. It's have you heard of it? Okay, they've developed curriculum for life skills and character issues from kindergarten all the way through high school. So there's different modules, like there's a high school focus. So they have one whole curriculum for high school, one whole curriculum for junior high, one whole curriculum for elementary school. And they all revolve around different things. Like the junior high curriculum we may use this fall, bits and pieces of it, really deals with character stuff and helping kids make better choices and know their identity and stuff like that. It's not faith-based, but when you look at it, you're like, oh, I could easily integrate faith into this thing, no problem. It's a very thorough. They give you games. Some of them are very not. Some of them, I think there was a disconnect. I look at some of these games, I'm like, these kids are never going to do this. They're never going to want to do this. So you have to kind of tweak it as you see fit, but it's a fantastic curriculum. So,
Thank you.
yeah, absolutely. Any other questions, guys? Has this been helpful? I've never done anything like this, so I hope it was what you were expecting and helpful. And I love doing this. I love sharing this. I love people that want to make a difference in their community. You're my people. You're my peeps. You know, like I'm at home with this. So thanks for having me. And we'll take a little break. And I think we're going to come back to the next session and really get into some nuts and bolts stuff. We're really going to dig into vision and more nuts and bolts type stuff. So thanks, guys.